Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 prop and betting stream for the John Deere Classic. I know it's the 4th of July, so happy holidays to everyone out there that is celebrating. Happy 4th of July as well. And let's get after it for moving days action. And here, this live stream, going to get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow. But first off, a look at the averages from round 2, how that'll impact how we're approaching our round 3 exposure, as well as a weather report and the Underdog and Prize Picks props that I've got my eye on early on this slate. So any sort of bets or any deep dives that you went on top of that, don't be shy at all to go ahead and let me know in the live chat. It looks like we already got Jose down there as well, giving us some Euro golf props that he likes. First off, like that you're looking at the DP World Tour stuff, and welcome on in as well. Hopefully this holiday is treating you guys nicely. And yesterday's live stream ended up going really well for our exposure. In terms of our 3-ball matchups, we cashed out on 4 of the 5 that we posted. And in terms of the 2 under on pick'em stuff that we had, we went 1-1 on that. So the Stevens under ended up hitting for us. The Kuchar over ended up hooking by 0.5. So overall, can't complain. It was a profitable day overall, especially on the matchup side. And for my own props that I posted on Patreon, ended up being profitable there as well. So our course reads the first few days have led us into the green for both slates so far. Let's try and add on top of that over the next day or so. So if I seem a little bit lower energy, the reason I had the lights off over here is I'm dealing with some heat exhaustion. Wasn't even sure if I was gonna be able to do this live stream, but started to feel a little bit better over the last half an hour or so. And here we are toughing it out. So if it's a little bit quicker, a little bit more to the point, that is going to be the reason why. But the averages from today, you can see on the screen, and for tomorrow, we have a different tee time setup. So unlike days 1 and 2, where we had an AM and a PM wave, because of the storms that are present in tomorrow afternoon's forecast, they're going to be sending them off in threesomes off of both tees. So they're starting at 7:45 local time. The last tee time is going to be just after 10. So a much earlier start compared to days 1 and 2. And the reason I point that out is even in round 2, if we take a look at the AM versus the PM, it played like a completely different golf course, which was very predictable with the kind of weather that we were projecting. We knew that the winds were going to kick up. The course was going to get firmer and faster throughout the day. And today it was a 1.4 shot difference between the two sides. And if you take a look at round number 1, it was a 1.85 shot difference between the two different waves. So, rather different scoring conditions depending on where you were teeing off. But for tomorrow, they're teeing off all about the same time. And you may say, oh, they're going off in the morning. That means it's going to play easier. You'd be wrong. Unfortunately, conditions aren't going to be nearly the same for round 3. So you can see on here, the sustained winds are closer to 12 to 15 miles an hour during the entire round. They're starting just before 8 a.m. local time. So to give you an idea of where this is all shaking out, actually, they're starting, I believe, just before 7 local time. So 1 hour earlier than I just said there. But even then, it's going to be about 11 miles an hour of sustained winds. And then throughout the rest of the afternoon, you've got 20 plus mile an hour wind gusts. And it's only going to get worse as the day goes on. So rather than it playing easy in the morning and then harder in the afternoon, same thing for round 1. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for round number 3. So, maybe not quite the minus 0.5 to minus 0.7 averages that we had in days 1 and 2 in the afternoon. I think it'll be a little bit easier than that because of the cut line. And what I mean by that is when you have the cut line after 36 holes, it gets rid of a lot of the guys that weren't playing well, some of your alternates, some of your sponsor exemptions that aren't always the highest tier players. They aren't going to be counted in the averages for rounds 3 and 4. So that alone is going to make things a little bit easier. And then on top of that, it is going to be windier, but it must be said, the course is going to be softer in the morning. So though they're going to be dealing with slightly harder conditions, it's not going to be exactly like they're playing in the afternoon. So I personally think the scoring average, and this will be a hot take, I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with this. I actually think the scoring conditions are going to be slightly harder as a whole compared to days 1 and 2, but I think the scoring average isn't going to move very much. And the reason I say that is partially because of that cut line stuff, but also the fact that the greens are going to be softer because they're going out early. It would be one thing if, they were sending them off at 10:30, 11 in threesomes off of both sides, but because it's at 7:45, as early as they could possibly make it for those tee times, they're going to have the softest conditions as you could possibly want. So that's why I think it's a little bit different for round number 3, and why I think the scoring average will be around minus 1.25 to maybe even minus 1.5. And the X factor that I haven't accounted for quite yet would be those pin locations, which we're going to go through here in just a few minutes. So if I think it's going to play minus 1.25 to maybe minus 1.5, Birdie average, probably not going to move that much. Maybe slightly goes down to like 4.3 per round. Bogey average might go up ever so slightly as well. Like maybe if it's playing closer to the, minus 1.25. But even then, I don't think it's going to move that much. I think to like 2.8, maybe 2.9 per round is what I'm personally expecting for moving day. And, in the past, I wouldn't have looked at the slate this detailed. My first few years of doing props, I would have said, oh, windier conditions, it's 100% going to be a whole lot harder. But what I've come to know is that the receptiveness of the greens, and especially at a Midwestern golf course like this, can sometimes be an even bigger factor than what you have with the weather. So that's why I've kind of changed my tune on what I think is going to happen for round 3. Still slightly harder conditions, but maybe not as drastic as some other people would think. The fairway average, it was about 9.3 in round 1. It was about 9.4 today. I think it's going to be somewhere in between those two numbers tomorrow. And then the green average, it was actually over 13 for round 1. So very big difference going from 13 down to 12.33. I think that was partially pin location based, but also had to do with the golf course firming up. So the green average, this is probably a hot take too. I actually think it's going to go up a little bit compared to what we had in round number 2 because of the cut line and also because they're going off earlier in the day. So, a little bit more of a nuanced take on how the golf course is going to play, but that's what I'm expecting for tomorrow's action. And the next thing we're going to go through would be those pin locations. So let's start off with hole number 1. And before we go through them, give me like 5 seconds here. I'm going to grab a water to the right. So you said you're here to be my on-course reporter. Yeah, I heard you were out there, Yahtzee. So enjoy it. Sounds like it was a lot of fun. I don't know if you saw my guy Byron out there. He's the Model Maniac on Twitter, YouTube. He's rather famous, of course, in the PGA DFS space. You should have walked into him too. I'm sure he's a hoot to see in person. I haven't gotten to meet Byron in person yet. But yeah, let me know, man, if you saw anything out there. He said he put in a parlay with 4 of the 5 3-balls I put in. Thank you for the 40-1 bink. Of course, Lenny. Those are the kind of comments that I love to see from chat. People able to take advantage of the stuff that we put out there. Only thing I say, Lenny, is that, you tell a few friends about my channel here. If they bet on sports, to try and get them to stop by here and smash the like button for me. And to anyone else out there too, if you guys haven't already smashed that like button, it's the only thing I ask with these live pieces of content, right? Subscribe, obviously, so you can see all the content to come, and like it so that more people can see it. So give me 5 to 10 seconds. I'm going to grab my water because we're going to be here for the next 30 minutes and my mouth is already getting a little dry. So be right back. Alrighty, we're already back, guys. Like I said, wasn't going to take very long to scoop through and get this water. It's going to make our lives so much easier in the process. And you're saying the course is so much firmer than the last few years. Yeah, I'd say it's a welcome change. And in terms of how the golf course plays, I think it's making it play a little easier for the shorter players because you don't have to hit driver on every single hole. So this year, maybe a little bit less driver dependent than we normally see. What's going on, Sites? Came in late. Hope I'm feeling better. I am, Sites. And yeah, thank you for the kind words, man. I was pretty miserable 2 hours ago. In fact, it was 50-50 on whether I was even going to be able to do that DFS stream I did earlier, but feeling a lot better now. So that's why we're doing the second stream. I appreciate the kind words, though. He said, my guy, what's up? Pretty solid. We had a round of golf today with my buddies. I played the worst golf that I've played in a few years. Spark Notes version, I got heat exhaustion. I was sick. I was delirious. I was seeing double on the golf course. And as you would probably think, seeing double and not being able to know which golf ball is the real golf ball was really difficult to go out there and score. But I had fun with my buddies. I had towels around my neck the entire time. It was, my body just gave out on me. It was very strange. Never happens to me on the golf course, but it happened today. But my one buddy shot -3. It was the first time breaking par in a few months. And my other buddy shot -8 and got the course record. So can't complain about the day. We had fun out there, and I'm back in business now. We're starting to feel a lot better, so can't complain about things. Over under on those plays, Jose. Oh yeah, so he's probably looking at unders, I would say, man. And I don't necessarily agree with those, Andrew, but yeah, he's probably looking at the unders because of how they played so far. Those are the guys that are in first and second place. So a lot of people, right, like to tail those players. I'm assuming that though. So Jose, obviously, if that's not the case, feel free to go ahead and let him know. He said, if this course had a little tighter fairways and a little more rough, it would be tough. I agree with that. I think the fairways being tighter is the main change they would have to make it harder. But yeah, if it's playing firm and fast and they had tight fairways, it could get there for sure. Damn, Luke, stay hydrated. You hate the heat so much. Yeah, I stay hydrated, man. I'm from Florida. I know what we're doing down here. And like I said, I don't usually ever have that happened. But every once in a while, I guess your body is maybe not as hydrated, maybe you don't have the kind of nutrients that you need. I don't know what it is. I'm not a nutritionist or anything, but it got me today. But we're feeling a lot better now. You said you smacked a nearly 4,200 parlay on all those. He said, you the man? Yeah, man. Hey, I like to see all of you guys smacking on those plays, by the way. And I will say, I'm not always the big fan of like taking those big parlays, but if you round robin them, I saw a few people that were doing that. That's a good way to do so. But, full transparency, right? We're not going to sweep 5-6-0 on those every single day. So try and, at least for me, I try and do most of my exposure on straight bets. But hey, a 42-1 parlay doesn't hurt, right? New to the community, but thank you for my knowledge. You've been winning because of me. Love to hear that too, Christian. And hey, if you're new, we'd like to have you here for a long time. So don't be shy at all to ask any questions or hit us up, or even just say hi if you want to and be a part of the community. He said, do I eat on the course? What's my favorite snack? I don't eat on the course, Antonio. That could have been it. I didn't eat anything out there. I mean, we just played golf straight up for like 3.5 hours. And it was a quick round too. There was no one out there. So it's not like I was like sitting, waiting in the sun the whole time. I think it was something before I was playing that caused it. Like maybe I didn't get enough sleep or something like that, because it was very unlike myself to be that. I usually get winded out there. I'm a bigger guy, but it's not usually that bad. Let's put it that way. Let's go to hole one. So hole one, back left corner pin location. So I would say it's pretty similar to today. It's on the fat side of the green. It's a little bit of a longer shot than it would be to this front collar. So overall, I don't think the scoring is going to change that much going from round 2 to round 3 at 1. Next up, we have 2. So that'll be a front right pin location. So that's the par 5, and didn't mean to click that there, but it's towards this front right corner of the green. It's a hair easier than round 2 for sure. In fact, I would maybe even say a good amount easier than round number 2, just because it's not as protected by that backside bunker. It's also as far away from the water as humanly possible, and it's a shorter shot in, and you have enough room over here on this middle right side to hit the ball close with your second shot. So I think that this is the easiest pin location that we'll get at hole 2, and the scoring should reflect that. Next up, we have 3, which is a front side pin location. If I can get this to load, shot tracker is kind of dying on me here, but it's towards the front side of this pin, this green location, and it's about where my cursor is right now. So it should be easier than round 2. It's a shorter shot in. This false front is tricky, so you don't want to miss short left, but outside of that, this is a much more straightforward pin than round 2. Next up, we have 4. So 4 is in the back left corner of the screen. It's going to be a little longer than today, and this one does look maybe a hair harder than round number 2, but it's not by much. It's a slightly longer shot. I guess that's the main issue there. And it's not as wide open. You can see it's a little bit more tucked in that back corner. You've got some sloping towards the left side. That's also going to make it harder to get close. But if you've got the draw shape in your bag, it's not a problem to get to that back corner. It's just that if you're trying to hit a fade to that back left pin location, I'm talking for a righty, of course, then it might be a little bit harder to access. Next up, we have 5, another shorter par 4. That is a front left pin location, or I should say like front right, I guess, pin location. It's kind of hard to say with the shape of the green that you have here, but it's about where my cursor is right now. I would say a little harder than today, just because it's closer towards the bunker to the right, but still an easier pin location than round 1, where it was in this back left corner and was definitely harder than you had today. Next up, we have 6. So 6 is in the middle left portion of the screen. So it's another shorter par 4. This was one of the easier holes on the entire golf course on round 1. Round 1, it was in this bottom little section. Today, it was on this top right. This is probably the hardest pin at 6. This back left is the second hardest pin, though, and it's maybe not as hard because you can see it's a wide open green complex. You don't have that bunker protecting it. However, it is on top of a little shelf and a slightly longer shot in. Next up, we have 7, which is a middle back pin location. So you're going to have a lot of room to work with here, but it's a longer shot in. And you can see the slope here that Gim used and was able to hit it pretty close to the hole. There were people using that all day. And in fact, Matt Kuchar used it to make his 5th birdie and go over on us, which was a little heartbreaking. Would have been a full sweep on my props if that wouldn't have happened. But hey, you're not going to full sweep every single slate. In fact, it's only going to happen once or twice a year, so I'm not too down about it. Next up, we have 8, which is a middle right pin location. If we can get onto the right tab, that one looks a little harder than today just because it is tucked a little closer towards this bunker, but it's not drastically different or anything. I mean, if you don't miss in the bunker, it's going to be a pretty realistic birdie look on a shorter par 4. Next up, we have 9, one of the hardest holes on the golf course. This is the easiest pin that you can get at 9, though, so they're giving players a bit of a bone by putting it on this front pin location. It'll play significantly shorter than these back ones that you had for the first few days, and it is a little bit less protected by the bunkers in that spot. Next up, we have 10, so it's a par 5 to start the back. It's a back left pin location, which is pretty close to where it was round 1, actually. Round 1, it was about where my cursor is now. Tomorrow, it's going to be over towards this right side where my cursor is now. So it's going to play harder than today. This front pin was easier to get at with a wedge, also easier to get up and down if you went forward in 2. Next up, we have 11. So that's a medium length par 4. It is a front pin location. It's going to be much easier than today. So it's a shorter shot in, and it's not like it was on top of a shelf, but this back part of the green is the high area of it, whereas this front pin location is down on the low spot. Next up, we have 12. So a par 3, it is up the hill significantly. So you got to kind of account for that. And it is going to be in the back portion of this green. So this is a harder pin location. It was in a lower spot today. So just like the last green, right? You want it in the low spot for the most part. Up on the high spot here and as a longer shot in, this will be a more difficult pin location for moving day. Let's go to 13 next. So 13 is a front pin. So it's going to be a front left pin location. That one is easier than today too. It's on the low area and a shorter shot in. Let's go to 14. So 14, a shorter par 4. It is a middle right pin location. So it's about where my cursor is here. This is the easiest pin on this hole. So not only do you have the backstop to use if you want to lay up and hit a wedge in, but if you're trying to get up and down from around the green, you're going to have a decent amount of room to work with. So, easier than round 2, but especially easier than round 1 where it was in that back corner. Next up, we have 15, which is a back left pin. This is going to be a harder hole. It's already longer to begin with. It's going to play like 490 to this back pin location, and it's even more protected by this bunker in that slope. So 15 today, they gave players a bone. In fact, Doug Gim hold out for eagle somehow. I didn't see that. I was on the course when that happened, I guess, but it's wild. That's a hard hole to make an eagle on. Let's put it that way. It's going to be much more difficult to do so tomorrow. 16 is a par 3. It is a front left pin location. It's easier than today, but it's not an easy pin, I would say. Like, this hole in general is a lot harder than it looks like on paper because you have this fall off to the left that makes people not want to be aggressive. You've got this back right shelf, which adds a little bit of difficulty too. This front pin, the reason why it's hard is you have these 2 deep bunkers where if you miss short that you're in them, but you're going to see a lot of birdies to this kind of pin because it's going to be like 155 yards. Even with some wind out there, you're going to get players that are hitting it to 5 to 10 feet. The issue is that the miss is probably even more penal than round 2. Scoring average might not change much, but you'll probably see more birdies and more bogeys there. 17 is a back right pin. It is about the same difficulty as today. A lot of people would probably think it's harder because it's a slightly longer pin location. However, it was on the top spot of the green today. It was at the high points where it's harder to get up and down to. Case in point, a Doug Gim who was in the bunker and had a hard time getting on top of the shelf to try and make a birdie putt. In this back corner, yes, it's still a long shot, right, to get to this back corner, but you don't have all that slope to try and get over, right? If that bunker shot, for example, that Doug Gim hit to that pin location, it was like 10 feet short. Without all that slope to work with towards this back pin location, that same kind of shot is probably within like 2 to 3 feet. So that one would be a little bit easier than round 2 as well. And then finally, 18 is the front right, also an easier pin. Today it was in the middle left, close towards that penalty area. And on the right side, you do have a little shelf over here. So it's not like it's like a completely cakewalk pin location. Like front left is the cakewalk pin at hole 18, but this is the second easiest pin that you get because it's far away from the water. The up and down from this right side really isn't that difficult either. The issue, and I guess there's not really an issue at 18, it's a pretty straightforward pin. I guess the slope adds slight difficulty because if you miss left, it is going to run further away from the hole. But if you're hitting a fade as a righty into this front right pin location, it is going to be very accessible. So overall, to go back to the averages and kind of account for them, I think a scoring average around like -1 to -1.25. Maybe let's go -1 to -1.5. Let's just open it up a little bit because of some of the variance with them changing it up and going off earlier. Let's go -1 to -1.5. Maybe -1.5 if the course is super receptive like it could be. Maybe -1 if the course firming out today is kind of going to lead into it being firmer over the weekend. I think that there's going to be some variance with those numbers, but a birdie average will probably be between like 4.25. Actually, we'll go 4 to 4.5 per round. Bogey average, we'll go 2.75 to 3 per round. We can kind of tighten that one up a little bit, I think. Maybe it's slightly over 3 per round, but I don't think it's going to get too out of hand after the cut line. The fairway average, we'll go 9.25 to 9.5. That feels like a decent one there. It might even be lower than that, closer to 9.25. And then the green average, we're going to go 12.5 to 13 per round. I actually think that one's going to go up. I know, like I said, hot take before. I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with that, but the higher tier players, them teeing off in the morning, I think is going to at least matter. Maybe to be more conservative about it, we could say like 12.25 to 12.75 per round, but it would lean towards it being slightly higher there. So that's an idea of conditions, what to expect from this golf course. And to hopefully, now that we've taken 20 minutes, we have some props to go through here on Prize Picks. And it looks like us kind of delaying a bit did give us a board to go through. Already had some stuff on Underdog that I was going through before we went live. So kind of have an idea for where these sports books have the pricing, but good to see that we also have all the Prize Picks stuff to go through. So if there's any props on Underdog Prize Picks that you guys want me to go through, feel free to go ahead and let me know. And we'll try and find some value on here. At least enter one slip together, and if not more. Let's see. Thanks, you'll hang out. You said looking to finish flex lineup on Prize Picks, so you'll be here. Yeah, and we do have a Prize Picks board, so that'll be pretty nice to go through. Eckroat sold for sure. Should have known better. Don't know who Eckroat sold for you. He didn't sold me. You kind of feel bad for the John Deere Classic. This tournament is always supported by the fans in this tournament. If it had a better field, it'd be a great event. I agree with you on that. I think that you got to have a better field this year than we usually have, but I'm not against that, man. And this iMethods guy says he's hurt by the Ben Griffin bogey and double in the last few holes. I mean, I guess, but it didn't really impact us at all anyways, right? We paired him up with the Matt Kuchar under on birdies, and he ended up going over. So it really didn't make that big of a difference either way. But I would say if you're getting hurt by props, you're getting hurt by anything you're entering, and it's actually emotionally impacting you, then you probably shouldn't be betting to begin with. That's a little bit strange if you ask me. He said it's always supposed to be a big tournament in Europe and then guys over there instead. Okay, so you're saying that in Europe there's always a big tournament this time and that's why it happens? Yeah, I think that's part of it, but also no one really wants to go to Illinois this time of year, right? No one wants to go to the middle of nowhere. It's not even like near a really big city. Like Silvis is like half a million, maybe a million people, I think at most. Don't quote me on that. I don't know for sure, but that's probably the main issue there is that it's not a big city. It's not a big market. It's not a big purse either. It's only 8.4 million total to the field. Just not the kind of event that's going to attract like your Scotty Schefflers, your Rory. So it's unfortunate, but it's some people's major championship. Like I know my guy Byron, who he's out there on the golf course today. Like he calls it his 5th major championship. So to some people, it's a pretty big week. Dunlap's putter is carrying him. Does it sustain? You're looking at his under 4.5. I would stay away from that one, man. Dunlap is one of the better players in this field. And I know I'm going to get crap for saying that, but I'll stand on that 100%. The guy's won twice in the last year. I know that he's had a really rough season so far, but there's a reason why I took his over on birdies in round 1. And if you took it today, it would have hit as well. So I would stay away from that, man. And maybe it's just because I'm somebody that believes in him a lot more than other people do. But Nick Dunlap winning twice as a 20-year-old, I mean, he's 21 years old at this point, never happens. There's even your superstars don't do that sort of thing. So I hold him to a much higher regard than most people do. So I would stay away from that one, man. He said, good mix of easier and tougher pins. Yeah, it looks like that to me too. I would say they side a little bit towards the easier side, which we would expect for a moving day setup, right? Most times it's going to be set up a little bit easier this time of things, but I don't think that it's too drastic in either direction. Thoughts on Gim's strokes line at 69.5. It's a pick 'em on both sides. So yeah, minus 110. You're kind of shocked that he's not 68.5. So yeah, he's the same thing on the sportsbook sites. He's at 69.5 as well. The reason why he's at 68.5, or not at 68.5, I should say, is because of the weather conditions. They're calling for a lot more wind than we've had the first few rounds. They're also expecting the course to maybe firm up a bit, would be my guess from those sports books, which they're not wrong about. Conditions are going to be a little bit harder, but if it's a -1 to that minus maybe 1.5 scoring average that I'm calling for, then that's asking Doug Gim to have a better than average day to cover, right? To shoot -2, it's a par 71. That would be gaining a stroke to maybe a half a stroke to the field to cover that kind of line, which I don't think it's too out of place. Like, I actually think that that's probably where they should have him, because Doug Gim in this kind of field, he's not an elite tier world beater. This is the kind of guy that for the year is gaining, I think, like 0.1, 0.2 strokes per round on average on the PGA Tour schedule. Now, you give him a little bit better than that when he's leading an event. He's playing so well through the first 36 holes. You have to give him a little bit of extra credit, but he's holed out twice for eagle so far. Right. So you got to hold that against some of the stats that you're seeing. And there's always the pressure of being the 36 hole leader. So I actually think that line at 69.5 is a pretty fair one. And a lot of it is due to the fact that, you know, if the scoring average is going to be -1 to maybe -1.5, that's about that sort of projection. So I think for your like mid to lower tier guys, they probably should be at 69.5, but you could find values for the over for those players. Now, Doug Gim would not be my favorite player for an over. I would not fade him at that sort of number. I would lean towards the under, like you're saying. However, there are guys at 69.5 that aren't elite tier players. You're talking about players that are medium to below tier guys that are maybe not ball striking it as well. Those are the kind of guys I'd be fading at that kind of number. So it kind of depends. Yeah, $500,000, correct. Yeah, it's not the biggest payout the first, that's for sure. You're from Chicago and you've never been to Silvis or even know where it is. Is it the capital of Illinois? I'm actually going to Google this real quick because the name, I knew it before I got into PGA DFS, but I'm just super curious to know this now. Illinois capital, and I'm not the kind of like geography buff that would know that. So no, it's Springfield is the capital there. No idea where I heard of Silvis before the PGA Tour, but it's at least been in the Rolodex for a while. These are probably the flattest and easiest greens of any tour course. 100%. They're not drastic in any cases, but they have a few spots where there's some slope. But yeah, I think you're right for the most part. A lot of the greens are super flat. There are a couple that come to mind that have those like tiers to them. But when you're on one tier versus the other, it's completely flat. Like you're on the top tier, there might be a big slope bisecting those two, but it's like a beach out there. It's completely flat when you get to that part. Which holes are producing the most bogeys? It's a good question. So if we go over here to data golf, I can show you that. The hardest hole in round number 1 was, I guess, 18, followed just a little bit behind by 9. So your 2 finishing holes. And then today, 9 was still very difficult. And then 18 was a hair easier. So 9 looks like the hardest hole on the golf course so far. 18 a close second. And then 15 too, right? It played 0.2 over par today. Round 1, it played 0.23 over par. That could be number 2 or 3 for the most difficult holes. So the finishing holes and then 15 on the back 9, the few spots where you can spring up. And then, yeah, it's he said it's Springfield, the capital. Yeah, no idea, man. It's in the Rolodex from somewhere that I had to think of it. Maybe it's from like a TV show or something where they played in Springfield or something. Or now Springfield. Now I'm getting mixed up. I mean Silvis, but we'll see. All right, let's see. I'm just deleting this guy's comments, bro. If you're gonna bitch about like one prop that like pushed and like act like a complete crybaby, then I have no patience for you, man. Like go out there, have fun with your buddies or something, but don't come into my live chat and try and bring down the vibe. Let's talk through a few props that we can take on Underdog. So now that we've got the riffraff out of here and we don't have to worry about people being a crybaby for no reason, let's try and find some props to enter. And I was showing you guys some of the value before, but like they have guys like Seamus Power at 69.5, but they also have elite tier players at 68.5. So for example, Sam Stevens, he's at that number, juiced a little bit towards the over. Same thing with Kevin Yu at that number, juiced towards the over. The only few players that they have at even money at 68.5 would be Siwoo Kim. He's at that exact kind of number. And then Thompson, he was at 68.5 and even money before, but now he's got that 0.9x multiplier towards the over. So you're talking about a lot of players that probably shouldn't even be at that number, because if you're looking at a -1 scoring average, that 68.5 there, that's 1.5 shots gained to the field. So somebody to shoot a 68 tomorrow, at least with that kind of scoring average, you're talking about 1.5 to 2 shots gained to do so, which is not an easy thing to do, even for a player that's well above average in this sort of field. That's asking quite a bit. So that's why a Thompson is juiced towards the over, for example. But a Siwoo Kim at 68.5, I'm not sure. Let's look at the sportsbook juice actually on him before I give my full take here, but I'm assuming he's juiced over, or at the very least, like even money. So let's see. So Siwoo Kim is -130 towards the over as well. So I tend to agree with what the sports books are saying here, because I don't think it's impossible to shoot a -3, to gain 1.5 strokes to the field. But should we be favoring really anyone in this field for doing so? I would say no. I don't think there's any elite tier players in the field, especially now that Ben Griffin was cut, that you should be projecting for that sort of number. And even with Ben Griffin in the field, right, he'd probably be at that 68.5 number, and even money maybe slightly juiced towards the under, like -120, -130 if he had made the cuts. It's just a slightly harder set of conditions, I would say. So not impossible to find value for the unders on strokes or the overs on birdies. In fact, Jacob Bridgman, this was a prop that I was looking at before we got on here. Like, I was considering for an over on birdies, and part of the reason for that is his birdie or better percentage this year, which is a little bit misleading. Let's actually, so let's the right category? No, that's driving accuracy. I was gonna say, yeah, it's not number 112. I was like, I was first sure going to be looking at the wrong stats. So let's bring up birdie or better percentage, like I'm meaning to here. He's number 58 on the PGA Tour in the category. And this is a little bit misleading even because he's played in all the hard courses, all the hard fields that you've had for this entire season. So for him to be 58 alongside a lot of the guys that are playing in Birdie Fest, like a Rosenmuller, right? He's a lower tier player. He's not playing in your signature events, your major championships where it's harder to make birdies or better per round. Jacob Bridgman is for the most part. So that's why at 4.5, I would consider him for an over, even if I think the birdie average is like in the 4.25 to 4.5 range. 4.5 being like the most optimistic possible projection that I think we see. Even if it is lower than that, even like 4 per round, God forbid, Bridgman would be projecting for like 4.5 per round. So like worst case scenario, it probably should be a coin flip at this number, but I think that it should probably be juiced towards the over. And when you take a look at the sports books, they agree with that as well. So Jacob Bridgman on DraftKings, he is -135 towards the over. So it's not like plus EV value, right? You're looking for -140 or more odds when you start to say that something is plus EV, but that's the kind of thing that I'd be leaning on. Like, it's not like it's a crazy mega value, but that was one of the first few props that I was kind of looking at. Let's see if they have them on Prize Picks. So this board obviously just got posted. So yeah, they do have them at 4.5 birdies. So maybe we can look for a pairing on Prize Picks instead, because Underdog didn't have as much stuff up. Like obviously Prize Picks usually has more props posted. So let's see what they have over here. Speaking of, I don't hate looking at birdies because I do think the wins are going to lead to slightly more bogeys, but there's still going to be quite a few birdies to be had, especially with moving day pin locations. So at 4.5, they have guys like Yim, Dunlap at 4.5. Not fading Dunlap. I already told you guys that's not going to happen. I think that he's a potential top 5 player in the world in the next few years. So I'm definitely going to stay away from fading my guy. But a Bridgman, if you're going to try and find a fade to mix in, it doesn't even have to be a fade. We could make it 2 positive stance plays, I guess. I'm looking for somebody at either 69 or 68.5 strokes that's not an elite tier player. And it looks like they have the pricing on here on Prize Picks pretty solid too. Like Underdog, I know they just like go with the sportsbook lines and they run with it. Prize Picks usually has a little bit more creative freedom when it comes to setting their lines. You know what? They actually have this board a little bit higher than you have on Underdog. So like, for example, Davis Thompson, I know he was juiced a little bit towards the over, right? He's at 69 strokes. Should Thurston Lawrence be at 70 strokes? Like, I don't think that's a good line here. And just to show you, I mean, the form heading in has been great for Thurston Lawrence, but for the week so far, yeah, he's a little bit putter dependent, but he hasn't been putter dependent lately. In fact, if you take a look at his stats, he was all ball striking last week. Week before that, he was a little bit putter dependent, but he's had some struggles with the putter. So it's not really a terrible thing to see him gaining a whole bunch of strokes putting, especially when last week at the Rocket Mortgage, another Birdie Fest, he gained over 8 strokes with the ball striking stats. So it might be 2 positive stance plays we take. And that's a risky prospect, I would say, just because of the wins that we're dealing with. But they may have overcompensated a bit. Like I know Underdog, maybe not so much. I kind of agree with where they had the board. But Prize Picks with having a lot of these guys 0.5 higher, that could be a bit of a mistake. In fact, I want to go and take a look at what is Thompson's juice, right? He's like what, -135, -145, I guess, actually, towards the over. They have Siwoo Kim at that 69 stroke mark. In fact, where is he? Did he just get taken off the board? No, there he is. He's at 69 strokes exactly. Like -2 to push that, anything better being a hit. This is still an easy golf course. Like I know it's windy. Morning tee times help the players out a bit too, right? It's going to be softer. I might be taking this kind of slip, and it's not really how I imagined attacking this kind of slate. If we could still use the Bridgman over, I still think that one makes quite a bit of sense too, where's he at? So he's at 916. He's one of the first few tee times off tomorrow. But based on the pricing that we're being given, guys, these might be the best kind of leans that we can find. So let's go through the rest of the categories, give you guys even more of an idea of how we're attacking this slate. So pretty better matchups. We've got a lot of guys posted over here. So all but the 0.5, that's the main thing to note right off the bat. 0.5, of course, goes towards the opponent. So, for example, if Thor Bjornsson and Chris Kirk tied, that would be an under, and Chris Kirk would cash. The under, the less would cash on this birdie or better matchup. So a lot of value oftentimes is on the unders. And Doug Gim versus Brian Campbell. Brian Campbell, I know he's not like an elite tier birdie maker or anything, but neither is Doug Gim. Doug Gim, for example, he's number 116 on tour. What is Brian Campbell? Oh, God, I know he's not very good. Number 107. So slightly better, actually, than Doug Gim in the category, right? So 9 spots higher, and he's getting the extra 0.5. So you could argue that that would be a decent value and a decent spot to take, because not only does Doug Gim have to deal with the pressure of being in the lead, he's also the worst birdie maker compared to Brian Campbell. Brian Campbell's having a pretty good week himself. So when we can find matchups like that where the opponent with the 0.5 is the better player between the two, then that's actually a birdie matchup I'm not so much against. So let's see what else we can cook with on here. So bogey average, I do think, is going to go up a bit. Not drastically, though. Again, just because of the cut line, maybe it only goes up to like 2.8, 2.9 per round. But even then, there could be some value on a couple of these players. In fact, let's go to the stat averages. Let's take a look at bogey avoidance and see exactly what we can cook up. Let's go Ricky Fowler, Keith Mitchell, and let's look at Grillo, because off of first look, I think those are the worst bogey avoiders. So there's Keith Mitchell, number 70. Ricky Fowler is number 60. So actually not terrible in either case. And let's look at Emiliano Grillo. And Grillo is number 98 on tour. So most of these guys are going to be above average bogey avoiders. And to go back to the positive stance play thing, you know what? I really, really like this Siwoo Kim under. I was gonna say, like, I was like, am I like looking at the wrong thing here? That's why I had to pause for a second. I was like, huh? They really have him at 2.5, just a little bit worse than the average. And yeah, he's minus 175 towards the under. Yeah, scratch that, guys. These are going to be the props that we take for the live stream. In fact, let's see. What is Davis Thompson? Davis Thompson's only minus 135 under. So yeah, I guess it's really is Siwoo that's like the biggest value out of all of those. But Thurston Lawrence at a -1, tying the average. That's also a pretty decent one. Let's do this for the stream slip. We're going to take these two. That's only a 2.5x payout. Now, how do they figure that? Did they completely screw the payouts on Prize Picks? And that's what we're seeing right here. So taking these two positive stance plays together is evidently only a 2.5x payout. If that's the case and that's not a mistake, then obviously don't enter that. And look at that. The same thing with the birdie or better ones. Maybe it's just the bogeys are worse that's screwing it up. So let's actually just double check that one. So if you took the Bridgman and then the under and Thurston Lawrence, yeah, that's 2.75x. That's a mighty fine shame, because I like these birdie or better props. Like there's some unders I think that really make sense on this board. Not even just Siwoo, but like the Davis Thompson one, you could even take for an under. I know he's only that minus 135 odds, but why the heck is this 2.5x? Like, did they just completely screw the bogey or worse board? In fact, what would it look like if we did this? If we went like the under on that, so that's still a full 3x payout. Let me throw in like the Thurston Lawrence. Yeah, the payout starts to get screwed pretty quickly. I don't know what Prize Picks is doing, but they're not cooking with some of these changes that they're making with the payouts. We could still take the Siwoo Kim prop by pairing it up with this birdie or better matchup. In fact, that's what we'll do for the slip here on Prize Picks. And obviously you guys saw me spitballing a few other props that I kind of like at this point for tomorrow. But because the Siwoo Kim prop is like insane value, it's, for lack of a better word, guys, it's like one of the more ridiculous lines that I've seen for a while. Siwoo Kim, by the way, in bogey avoidance, he's pretty good. He's number 54 on tour in the category. And for him, and he's better than that a lot of other years. Like if you go back to like the last 2 or 3 years, there are some times where he's top 25 on tour in terms of avoiding bogeys. And that's because of how good of a short game he has. So that minus 175 odds, I think, kind of speaks for itself. That's well into the plus EV range. And even though I don't love the birdie or better matchups, to make it playable, you guys saw the payouts that we were getting with that Siwoo Kim prop. you've got to pair it in with this kind of prop. There's just no other way to get the kind of payout that we're hoping for. So that'll be the slip that we're taking for the stream, guys. Make sure to check out the Patreon page for every single piece of action that I'm taking, whether that's on Prize Picks or Underdog. You guys can find all of that over there, as well as for all the action throughout the weekend. That'll be for round 4 as well. So just like the live stream that we had right here, round 4, we're going to be doing the same exact thing, but there's going to be a lot of other exposure I'm entering, right? Just as I mentioned a little bit earlier. For all of that, you can find that on the Patreon page. And I guess to go back to the Bridgman prop, let's see, do they have Lawrence on here? Because that was one of the other props we were really looking at. They do, but they only have his birdie or better line posted. So maybe I do even take the Bridgman with Lawrence one on Prize Picks, right? That might even be another 2-leg that I end up entering. Yeah, use those 4 props in your exposure. I'm going to co-sign all of them, even though we haven't taken the Bridgman or the Lawrence props quite yet. Those are 2 solid props that I would mix in as well. Then what we're going to do to round off this live stream is go to the matchup side of things and see if we can run in back on top of today's exposure, because obviously today the matchups ended up working out quite well. Let's see what we can work with. So let's see. Let's leave off. Thoughts on under 11.5 pars for Kuchar? Under on pars for Kuchar, I would not take, Jose. He is one of the more conservative players on the PGA Tour. So if anything, I would be looking at his over on pars, especially because he's the kind of guy that will just get up and down when he misses greens, but he's also not hitting it to 5-10 feet very often. So yeah, that's not my favorite lean. Our boy Sanjay, yep, I'm right there with you, man. Tough week for our guy. Lipsky and Taylor Monty are both at 70.5. You know, both are having horrid years, but have to ask him to shoot -1 on the course. He said unders are tempting, Antonio, but remember, -1 is about a field average round. So you're asking Lipsky and Taylor Montgomery to have a field average day when both players on the year are losing a half a stroke to a stroke per round on average. So I would say that it's not as easy or as straightforward as it maybe looks like on paper, because they have to match the field average. And for those kind of guys to have an average or better day, if you look at their percentage of doing so this year, it's like 35 to 40% in most cases. And, I'm just, giving you a reference point on that. I don't know the exact number with those 2 players, but below average players that are averaging like a half a stroke to a stroke lost per round are only having average days about that percentage of the time. So there's a reason why they're at 70.5, a little bit worse than the average. I'd rather fade my guys, though, at 69.5. Or if I was going to take a stance against somebody, you're going to have players at 69.5 that also aren't super top tier. So I'm not against doing it that way. The big boys only come to the John Deere to make birdies and get a false sense of confidence. Yeah, there's something to be said for that as well. It's a birdie fest. Always makes you feel a little bit better about your game. Thanks for always talking sense, India, and not for any exposure. Just curious on who I'm going to take it for this weekend. So you're talking about a winner. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to bet anything out right at this point unless I do my due diligence. But yeah, you're just asking for who I think wins this thing. Probably Davis Thompson. That was my take before. Somebody also asked me on the DFS stream who I thought would win this thing. And it's because of the course history. He finished and obviously won this last year. He has a lot of top finishes around this event as well, outside of the win. And at least the form that I saw today, I was able to watch his round of the morning wave. Every shot was just the absolute nuts. He was hitting every fairway. He even hit it in a divot once or twice, and he still got out of it. And it was like he was in the 10 to 20 foot range at the very worst on every iron shot. So yeah, he would be my lean as of right now. Can't believe you're asking me about Zach Johnson. Hey, it's his course, right? But he legit plays his course every year. Yep. And he's a former winner as well. If you check out his transcript from this week, Antonio, in fact, I'll just do it right now. He gave one of the more convincing interviews that I've seen for quite a long time. And by convincing, I mean, it made me add him to my player pool, and it made me even consider him for an outright bet this week. Now, I didn't bet him outright. I'm not that crazy on Zach Johnson, but let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. And we'll do this real quickly, right? Just to kind of give you an idea of exactly what he was doing. So let's go to the transcripts and let's find my guy, Zach Johnson, who, there he is. There's the PDF we're looking for. So they asked him about, okay, so did they really? Okay, I'm at the bottom. That's why I was like, did they really take that part out of it? So they asked him about, like, he said, what does being here mean to you, essentially, right? To kind of paraphrase the question, he gives all this stuff is always about nice being home and whatnot. And then they asked him, like, how many times have you been here? Right? He's been here 23 times. And he goes on for like 3 or 4 questions, back and forth dialogue with this reporter, saying that it's like this golf course that he's experienced. He knows the course. He knows where not to go given the conditions. You feel like you've had every wind, which, by the way, good for tomorrow, right? He's had every wind that you can play in. You feel like you've had every element thrown at me here. I've had everything Mother Nature has thrown, wet, dry, windy, whatever you've had it. So I feel like I can navigate it in a pretty opportune manner. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. And he said this week, because I watched the interview, he added this week after that. They did not add that to the transcript. Bad job in the transcript. You're supposed to get every word in there, especially if you're adding in the middle of that sentence, right? Like, let's get all the words in there. He says he still has to execute. You think your game is at a good point where the execution is really the only thing you have to focus on, and you love that. So he just very comfortable here. You can read the entire interview if you guys want to on the PGA Tour media site. But the guy loves the golf course. So I completely agree with you on that one, man. And it wouldn't surprise me if you had a big week. Siwoo is 68.5 and the under is -105. Kind of crazy, the under on Underdog. Yeah, I think that the 2.5 bogeys is a better line than that, but -175. And I know you've been on the sports books, completely different story, right? If you have to eat the -175, but yeah, you're right. Like, if anyone's going to shoot low, I think Siwoo Kim would be the kind of guy to do it. Prize Picks are watching now, and they'll take that Siwoo off the board. You can tell I was dancing around saying how much I liked it, right? Yeah, that's why I was dancing around saying how much I liked it, because you're spot on. I know they watch these live streams, and hey, if it gets ripped off the board, we know why. If it happens that quickly, they're watching the live stream. And yeah, you're spot on about that. Do I like the look of any 18-hole matchups? Yeah, we're going to look at the matchups right now. So we'll see, Sava. We'll see if there's anything worth entering. So let me get a sip of this water, and let's do the deep dive on some of these matchups. So going for the long shots really worked today. In fact, our long shot strategy for these 3 balls has worked for years at this point. So we're probably going to do the same thing for round 3. So I'm looking for guys that are like +140 at the very worst, probably even closer to +200 odds. That should not be the second or third favorite. So far, I've not seen much that I've liked. A lot of the guys that are like +200 are deservingly there. They're some of the worst players that we have in this field. But like a Carson Young kind of stands out going against like a Lee Hodges and Hoey. Only reason I say that Carson Young kind of stands out would be how he's playing today. You can see in round 2, he gained 2 strokes on approach. He also gained strokes off the tee. So, I mean, ball striking's there, but I don't know. It's still Carson Young at the end of the day. We've got to account for that as well. They've got Colley versus Lawrence and Eckroat. Maybe Eckroat could be somebody to take a look at. The reason I say that is, I mean, he's a tour winner. He's somebody that's made it to the FedEx Cup playoffs like the last 3 seasons. And to this point of the week, let's see, he gained off the tee on approach today. Round 1, he was able to do the same thing. In fact, even more significantly. And then he's up against Lawrence, who I don't hate Lawrence tomorrow. I still think he's more than capable of playing well, but he has been putter dependent this week. So we can't hold that against Lawrence on this case, right? He has been a little bit more putting dependent than we'd like. And then you also have Bud Colley, who is the big favorite there. I don't agree with how big of a favorite Colley is. And he's been okay ball striking this week. He gained off the tee, but he's lost strokes with his approach play. So yeah, and Austin Eckroat at +210. That's a prop that I'm going to add to the portfolio. I can only enter on Hard Rock Bet, so I'll have to see what kind of odds I can get, but +210 or better, and that'll be something that I'm entering. Then you've got Taylor Moore, Cole, and Zach Johnson. We just got done talking about Zach Johnson, right, and how much he likes this golf course. Let's look at those other 2 boneheads. So we've got Taylor Moore first for the week. He's gained to ball striking and lost putting. It's actually a pretty decent stat profile, but it is still Taylor Moore after all, and I don't think he should be the favorite. That is egregious in my opinion. And then you've got Eric Cole here as well. And Eric gained off the tee, gaining on approach, and losing with the putter. So as much as I think Zach Johnson fits this course and probably shouldn't be a +200 number, I'm going to stay away from that one because the shots gained metrics on a Cole and a Taylor Moore are a little bit more sturdy. In the case of Austin Eckroat at over +200, the shots gained metrics weren't as sturdy with the 2 players that he's going against. So that's why I'm going to prefer that one. Pot Guider +170, but he is against you. You plays really well at this golf course, so I don't really want to fade him. Let's look at Springer versus Cummins and Fishburne. And yeah, not really big names in that group, but Springer has played really well at this course before. Unfortunately, though, he's lost 2 strokes on approach so far. So yeah, let's scrap that one. I don't really want to back somebody that's not hitting the ball well, at least if I can help it. Sam Stevens should not be minus money there. That's crazy, but he is going against Taylor Montgomery and Camilo, who are probably 5 or on the bottom 5 or bottom 10 players that made the cut. And that's not a diss to them. It's just I think both of them would admit that. And maybe not publicly, but to themselves, they'd probably agree with that statement. Jake Knapp versus Fowler and Higo. We can look at that one too. So Higo, yeah, losing with both ball striking stats and gaining 5 strokes putting. Yeah, it's an easy fade. And then let's go to Ricky Fowler too. So Ricky Fowler's also been a little bit short game dependent for my liking. Only about a stroke gain to ball striking, 2.7 strokes around the green. And then who's the big plus money, right? I guess only plus 140 on that. Napster's been playing well this week, so that's why that one was tempting to consider. He's gained about 6 strokes ball striking so far this week. So the plus 140, I wish it was closer to plus 150 or better. In fact, I wouldn't bet this plus 140, but if I can get plus 150 or better, I would do so on Hard Rock Bet. And let's keep going on this. And plus 155, plus 160, even better on that. But I think that's really pushing it. You're probably not going to get that on any sports book. And then you got Grillo versus Homa and Lipsky. Yeah, I'm not going to back Homa. He's just too volatile at this point. Grillo should not be the favorite. And yeah, I'm not betting Lipsky in any format, any bet. He's just unpredictable, to say it in a nice way. And then you've got Hoshino versus Dunlap and Del Solar. I know I'm psychotic, and I'm not going to do this, but I know I have a really big psychotic risk tolerance where I'll risk it for the biscuit, no matter who it is. But Nick Dunlap, I don't know if I could do it at plus 180. He's, in my opinion, should be the favorite in this matchup. Like, Hoshino is not a better player than Dunlap, not even close. Dunlap's stratosphere is better than Rakuya Hoshino. Dunlap will probably have 5+ tour wins at the very least. Hoshino will get lucky to even get into contention once on the PGA Tour. So I hate to talk all that shit and then not play it, but if a sports book were to, like, let's say put plus 200 or more odds on Nick Dunlap, then I would 100% play that. I'd have to put the stigma aside and just say, hey, a good number is a good number. And then the last one here we have is Thompson versus Gim and Campbell. Yeah, not going to bet Gim with the 2-hole out eagles and the pressure. It just feels like he's due for some regression at some point. I love Thompson at this course, but I don't know if I can bet him at plus 110 odds. Like, that's just, it feels like it's pushing it a bit. So yeah, I'm going to see what I can get on Jake Knapp. There's a chance I still play him at that plus 140 mark, but I do want slightly better odds than that, truth be told. But yeah, the Austin Eckroat for sure. That feels like a matchup that I want to take. And in an ideal world, I would have hoped to see worse shots gained metrics on a Taylor Moore and Eric Cole, but maybe you could sprinkle that one in as well. But for sure, going to be taking this Austin Eckroat one if I can get a similar line, because in my opinion, he should be the second, if not the favorite, out of those 3 players. So that's all for the live stream, guys. Best of luck with all of your moving day exposure, whether it's on the pick'em sites or over there on the matchups as well. I hope you guys can cash out on as many slips and as many bets as humanly possible. And let's get this weekend started off the right way. And like I said before, the only thing I ask for from you guys on these live streams is to smash the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, and also let a friend know, right? If you enjoyed the content here, if you learned something from it, maybe made some money on some of those matchups that we had from round number 2, then show some love to the channel that way. And the Patreon page is also a good way to show love to the channel. Over there, of course, you guys can get every single slip that I'm entering for these slates as I'm entering them. So first off, before any sort of line movement happens, and every single piece of exposure that I'm mixing in, on top of all the research stuff that I do. So whether it's the stat averages for all these given events, the weather reports, which I'm posting for my members, you can see towards the bottom, right? Even the DP World Tour covered from all the different averages that I post. Make sure to check out the Patreon page for all of that. But that's all, guys. It's getting late over here. Happy 4th of July to everyone. And let's have ourselves a Saturday.